everyone. Welcome to the very first members only live event for Sew with Tara Reid. I am so excited to be here with you today. I'm hoping someone is here with me today. If you are here, give me a hello in the chat, please. If not, I'm just going to keep on going, and this will be for the replay. So welcome if you are here for the replay as well. Today, we are going to be working on this Christmas morning table runner that I designed exclusively for you. I'm not going to be selling it. I'm not going to be giving it anywhere else, only in this membership. Let's see. All right, I'm going to give it a minute. Oh my gosh, this light is so harsh. Well, I'm going to give it a minute, see if anyone's going to join me live. I think at least one or two people were planning to, so maybe they are working on getting to the watch room. I keep staring at the screen to see what I can see. What happened to, uh-oh. Oh, hi Marina, how are you? Welcome. Where are you coming from? I need to go fix a camera, so give me a chat of where you are located. For some reason, my camera turned off. Not ideal. Hello. Menu. What the? Oh, shoot. Okay, hold on. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Well, as I have learned, if it's technology, something's going to go wrong. So this is my camera that's supposed to be looking at my sewing machine, and I can't see anything on the LCD screen because it's on a screen here. But I got to get something fixed so it stops turning off. I thought I had that fixed. Okay. Okay, let me go put that back on the stand, and then we are going to get going. All right. Okay, that is clicked in place. So, welcome, welcome again. My name is Tara Reid. I'm very excited. This is my very first members only live for Sew with Tara Reid. I have been working on this program behind the scenes for, I think, 7 months. So yeah, it has been a lot of work, a lot of fun, and I'm really, really excited to have you and Charlotte. Oh, Charlotte, North Carolina. My sister lives there. I was just there recently. I have no idea where though. Sharon Acres Road, wherever that is. Now that I announced that. But we're not public. This is just us, just us members. So for our first live, I designed this table runner for you. It's called Christmas Morning, and it's not going to be available anywhere else. I'm not going to sell it. I'm not going to give it to anybody else. It is just for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through some different tools. I'm going to show you some basics. We're not going to get this whole thing put together or we will be here all day. You do have the PDF that you can download. Hopefully you already did that from the membership area. And okay, so I did ask in one of the emails, like, where are you at with quilting? Because this is basically a beginner quilting project. And one person said they're really interested in quilting, but they get intimidated and basically freeze because there's so many tools, there's so many amazing quilters. I totally get that. I often feel intimidated when I'm around people who've been quilting for 20 years and I'm like, oh, I'm not as good as them, but you know what? It doesn't matter. We all start where we start. And also, can you just let me know in the chat if the sound is good? I think I have it all set up well. Also, feel free to put any questions that you have Any clarification that you need in the chat. My eyes are going to be kind of going all over. I have 3 cameras, and I'm also watching the screen to see what people are saying, what you're asking, because I am here for you, not just to stand in my room alone with all these cameras staring at me. So let's get started. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to switch cameras. Okay, so now you can see my desktop or my workspace. Okay, sound is good. Oh, okay, Marina, you're the one stuck in neutral. Okay, we're gonna play to you today. So this is the information, and I try and be really specific. If there's a lot of pieces being cut out of one color fabric, I like to do charts, lots of letters, lots of tips in here. And then we're going to go through the tree, a little more complicated than some others. The gifts, I'm going to show you exactly how to get those done. And we're going to break this down into pieces so that you're going to see how it all works, right? So you can go to other projects as well and see how the same skill is going to work in lots of different blocks. Now, before we get started, I want to mention one thing about templates. So when you print templates, you have to print them at actual size. And then I want you to take a ruler. I always put a square or a line. Some of my older ones I did a line, now I do a square. And I want you to take a ruler and I want you to put it up to that. And I want you to make sure that that square is 1 inch by 1 inch. If it is not, everything will be off a little bit. So that is really, really, really important. And it's usually just a setting on your printer. It likes to default to fit, but you want actual size. Okay, so if you remember nothing, remember that about templates. Now I'm going to plug in my iron. I'm going to move some stuff. So, well, everyone that sews or quilts in 2024 and beyond needs a few basics, right? So self-healing mat, a rotary cutter of some sort. They have lots of different shapes and sizes. You can decide which you like better as far as the feel of the handle. This is another one where you just kind of push, you move this back and forth to get the blade out. And this is like a wavy blade. You really just need a straight blade. This one goes like this. There are some where when you squeeze it, the blade goes out. When you release it, the blade comes back, which is really good safety because sometimes I just move this and leave it open, and then people sometimes get mad at me on my YouTube comments because I'm not being a good role model. So I'm going to try really hard to be a good role model. Knock on wood, I've only cut myself once with a rotary blade, but this really is a razor blade on a circle, so it is dangerous. Please be careful. Then you need at least one ruler, acrylic ruler. I would get bigger than this. If you only have one, I would get a 26 inch, because if you're cutting from fabric, like where it's folded in half, that will be long enough to cut your fabric. This will not be long enough. If you can afford and want to get a few more rulers, this would be the next size I would recommend. If you decide you love quilting, I would start getting some squares and any other shapes that you like. Squares being the first set that I would get. And there's all different kinds. I'm going to grab a couple. There's all different kinds and different brands. These are 2 of the Riley Blake. That's who I designed fabric for. These are both designed by, they're both designed by Lori Holt. She's been teaching quilting for a really long time. Loved this one at first. It has this green that's not quite a 1/2 inch, but then they just came out with these, and now this is my favorite because this blue is exactly a 1/4 inch, and you're always using 1/4 inch seams in quilt blocks. So I'm going to show you how we're going to look at that and use that. Then another one of my favorite things, quilter's clappers. Big piece of wood, unfinished. It absorbs heat. when you are, after you iron, and it helps keep things pressed. They're really comfortable. There's, again, lots of brands. If you could only get one, get the bigger one because you can press shorter things with that. But you can be really efficient with bigger things. This you can do anything to, like you can always move it like that if it's something bigger. But my feeling is with Quilter's Clapper, if you can only have one, bigger is better. Then pins, I'm going to show you some of those. You need a pencil. You need an iron. You don't have to have a fancy iron. I'm going to show you something about ironing. I'm trying to get used to where I am at here. Okay, you just need to have an iron that gets hot. If it has steam, great. Sometimes you're going to use steam, sometimes you're not. If it doesn't have steam, you can get a mister bottle, which looks like this, and it sprays out a really nice fine mist. And sometimes I use both. I will mist and use steam. So it just really depends. Now, this is the secret to success with quilting. Starch or a starch alternative. Starching your fabric gives it stiffness and form, so that when you're cutting all these little pieces that need to be very precise sizes, they're going to stay more consistent. And then when you're putting them together to sew those 1/4 inch seams, they're going to sew a lot straighter and a lot more consistent. So let me show you how that works. And let me explain what starch versus starch alternative is. So starch is starch. I don't even know what's in it, but apparently bugs like starch, especially in the South. That's what I'm told by the people who make Best Press starch alternative. So this is a starch and a stabilizer, but it doesn't have whatever's in regular starch that bugs like. So they obviously think this is way better. This comes in lots of different scents, which is cool. It's a much more natural scent to it. This has a little bit more of a chemical-y scent. I don't know. I use this a lot. It's really easy to find. I just grab it at Walmart. It's like under $5, I think, for this big bottle. And I don't know. I have not had bugs attack my quilts yet, but my feeling was kind of like, okay, if I use this, I can then just wash the project to get that out. So then no bug problem. Now, whichever you use, you want no heat, no steam. So I'm going to turn the steam off. This is one of my fancy irons. Whenever I touch it, it goes down. And when I let go, these little purple feet come out. So I don't have to tilt it like that, like you do with some regular irons. But this is definitely like when you have all the other fun things that you want. So here is a piece of fabric we're just going to play with and see how wrinkly that is. So I'm just going to shake my starch and I'm going to spray it on there pretty generously. You want it to look damp. Oh, the other thing about starch is if you put too much on, sometimes when you iron it, you'll get little white flakes that you won't get with the Best Press starch and stabilizer alternative. So that's just another thing. So you let whichever material you use, like whichever, there's also one called Magic Press, I think. So there's a lot of different types of things that will do the same thing. You let it sit for a second, minute, whatever, so that it goes into your fabric. And then you're just going to slowly press over so that it dries. And this is why you don't want to use steam when you're using starch, because the goal is to dry that liquid that we just put into the fabric to make it stiffer. And you can kind of see, it looks like, I can see it. I don't know if you can see it. It looks like steam. That's basically the moisture from the starch evaporating. And you always want to do your starching before you cut your pieces, because sometimes, depending on the fabric, depending on how big a piece of fabric it is, depending on how big the piece you need to cut is, starch might make it shrink up a little bit. And then your sizes are going to be slightly off, which is a big no-no in quilting. So now you can kind of see, on this end we starched it. See how that's moving? It's a little bit stiff. This end, not starched. Way more jiggly. That's a technical term. So that is the power move for quilting. We're just going to move that. Okay. Now, I have another question for you, whether you're watching live or afterwards. You can, I don't know, email me, pop a comment if you're here live. I'm still working on the community part of this membership, and I'm not sure where to do it. So the website where I have all of the content does have a community option that I'm trying to figure out. So it would be basically self-contained. When you log into the membership site, you could go into the community, you could ask questions, you could share. You know, once we get some more people in here, I can do announcements in there, so we can have it totally self-contained at thesewwithtarareed.com, or we can do a private group on Facebook. So let me know which you would prefer. I can figure out either one. I just want to do whatever you as a member are going to prefer. So back to my overhead. Move the iron. So today, so on the printout and above my head is very traditional, right? Christmas, red and green. I'm using some of my quilty tonals in that from the, I think that was from my spring barn quilts collection. So today I decided I would do something totally different because I just got this fabric in, and this is my Let's Get Lost in the Woods. So I want to show you how doing the same exact pattern with different colors gives a totally different look. So obviously you can see that it already does, right? So let me, here, we'll do this. A little bit different, right? So with this fabric that we're going to be working on today, it's going, and I will finish this up later today and post it in the membership in the section where this live will be. Hold on, we have a question. You starch the entire piece? Yes, yes. I hope you didn't cut everything. If you cut everything, don't worry about it. But for future, yes, you want to starch your big pieces and then cut. Very good question. So I did a few of these blocks. So I did the two small gifts, and then I did one of the big gifts. So I'm going to walk you just through a couple of the steps and the techniques, like how to get these bow tops done. And I'm also going to show you an alternative way to do the tree from what I did on the sample, because on the sample, the tree is just a single piece of fabric and it looks super cute. And then the way I quilted it made it a little bit more fancy, but I'm going to show you a way to make the fabric part of the tree more fancy. I'm just going to bounce back and forth from thing to thing. Okay, so those are the gifts that I wanted to show you. And then my plan is I'm going to be using this brown for the corners and this green print for the borders around the outside. So it's going to have a real woodsy cabin feel, and then I'll bind it with the green. Oh, another thing I want to show you. I don't know if you guys use fabric clips, but I love them because, as I've said in many other videos on YouTube, they never stab me like pins sometimes do. But I also really like them for quilting because what I did was I put stickers on here, and I do have this in the membership area. I'm trying to remember where. I think it's in the Cricut, like the Sewing with Cricut, because if you have a Cricut machine or another cutting machine, I have a PNG file that has 1/4 inch squares with each letter A through Z that you can just print that and cut that on stickers, and you can make yourself a set of alphabets. Or there's also a JPEG that has the lines, so you can print it and you can cut it. I have a video on my YouTube channel of different ways that you can use. You can take like little pieces of paper and put the letter. I had shown on that video to just take a Sharpie and write the letter on these clips. And then when I was working on this project, I realized I could barely see it, and I was spending too much time straining my eyes trying to figure out what letter was on these different clips. So that's when I came up with the sticker idea. So lots of different ways to go, but that is in the membership if you want to make that for yourself. Okay, we are going to start with the gift. And I have pre-cut because I don't want us to be here for 3 hours. I know we want to learn stuff, but we want to have a Saturday too. So I have pre-cut these sizes to make the large gift. Now, a couple things that you will notice is how I chose to cut the fabric. So this fabric, shoot, let me find a bigger piece. Here's what this fabric looks like. Cute, right? So you'll notice the way we designed it, like this strip here has all the animals looking this way, and then this strip, they look this way. And so I chose to take advantage of that when cutting the pieces for the gift, so that the animals are all looking towards the ribbon instead of having them all look one direction. You can do either way, but this is just the way I chose to work with this directional fabric for this gift. And I did that by what we call fussy cutting it. And I don't remember exactly what size that's supposed to be. Hold on. Let's take a look at our chart. So this is piece L that we're working with. And L is 3.5 by 7.5. Now, one thing to note on this materials list, it assumes that you're going to make your topper, and I did write this on here. It assumes you're going to make it the same as I did. So these gifts match and these gifts match. But for my current one, none of the gifts are going to match. So instead of cutting 4 out of the same fabric in this size, I did 2 out of one fabric and 2 out of another. And I believe, yeah, I did make a note if you want to do all the gifts. And I also made a note on the gift section, which also shows you, it shows you like what pieces you need right here just for this gift and then just for this gift. So you can look at it either way. And then I did that little note there. So 3.5 by 7.5. And we want it to be very specific pieces, right? I don't want, well, I guess I do have half a head, but I don't want just like behinds, animal butts on one side. I want animals. So what I do is I take my ruler, and this ruler is 6.5 inches wide by 12.5. So you can either just kind of eyeball it. We need it 3.5, so that's like to here, wide by 7.5. So we can just kind of eyeball it and move the ruler to where we want it. Or if you want a better guide, you can take tape. This is washi tape, it's called. If you're a crafter or like using planners, like paper planners, you'll know about this. It's a very low tack tape. And so what you can do is you can just put the tape where you're going to need to cut. Oop, didn't do a good job pulling that tape. You can also use painter's tape, but this is a little cheaper and easier to get on and off. You can grab it at most craft stores, or you can find it on Amazon. So now this gives me a better, an easier way to like look and see where I'm cutting. And then you need to remember there's like going to be a 1/4 inch lost on all sides when we sew it together. So you don't want to put it like this, where this moose is right up against that, because you'll lose a 1/4 inch of that. So you want to think about that a little bit when you're fussy cutting as well. So let's say we want that. So then this piece would feature the moose and the bears. So then you're just going to carefully turn that, or you can put it on a rotating mat. That's not totally straight there. The more you turn, the more your fabric might move, and this fabric hasn't been starched, so it's really warbly. So if you can cut at a different angle, that works well. So now we have the two sides. So now we just need to turn this over. Wait, no. I'm going to line up this edge with the 3.5. Let me do this way first. Now I'm all confused. See, now you're not going to feel so bad when you get confused too. Where did I want this? No, that's where I wanted it. Okay. All right, so 7.5. I got to put it on the mat because my ruler is only 6.5 inches wide. So we need it to be 1 inch wider than that. So I'm going to line my ruler up against these grids. So it's great because the ruler has grids, your mat has grids. I'm not being a good role model. I left that open. And then we're going to turn it and we're going to line it up against the 3.5. But also as you do that, make sure you're looking to see that these top and bottom lines are also lined up well on the fabric. That way you'll know that your fabric is nice and squared. All right, so that is an example of how you can fussy cut your pieces. Now let's go back to the ones I have already cut. Actually, let's go to this first. I want to show you something about this plaid. Now, left that open again. I love a good plaid, but sometimes plaid, if you're a beginner, do not use plaid. That's my best advice for you, because it is harder to get it to be straight. You have to, like, I don't know, mess with it when you're ironing a little bit more, but it's possible. So I'm going to show you how I cut this. It's from a bigger piece of plaid, but I made sure that when I cut the two sides, that I lined up the stripes. It would have been really easy to cut it so it kind of went like that, but then the gift wouldn't have looked like it was wrapped properly because the plaid wouldn't match visually as it went across. So that's another thing to think about when you have something that's really striped, especially a plaid. So it's doable, but you just really need to pay attention to where you cut that. It's kind of like fussy cutting, but in a different way. All right. So this part, nice and starched, nice and stiff, going to be super easy. We're going to put these two pieces together. We're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam. Then I'm going to show you how to set the seam, press that open, and then we add this one to the other side. But I want to show you the next step before I move so that we can do 2 sewing things at once. And I use a combination of clips and pins when I do quilt blocks. Like for this, that's so simple, where it's just straight, I'll use the clips because it's faster, and again, they never draw blood. When we start putting this all together, I'm going to start using pins, and I will show you why. So now the bow is actually a shape that is called, if you're not familiar with quilting, it's called a flying goose or flying geese when you have more than one. And it is made with a rectangle and 2 squares. Well, there's a couple ways to make them, but this is how we're going to make these. So we have our, I think it's our H piece. Yes, our H rectangle. And these are going to be made the same way for all 4 gifts, each size. And then we have 2 squares. So basically we need to turn these squares into triangles. So the first thing we're going to do is you're going to turn the squares over and take a pencil. Where did I put my pencil? I had a pencil. Hey, pencil. Okay, we're going to take a pencil when we find it, and we're going to draw from corner to corner. All right, I'm going to take a pen because my pencil has gone MIA. What the heck? And I'm going to place a ruler from this corner to this corner. I'm just going to draw a line. This will be easier for you to see too. You don't want to use any old kind of pen necessarily because it won't come off. You want to use a heat erasable pen that is designed for fabric, or you can use a chalk line, but usually for something like this I would just use a pencil. But we'll just assume that this happened for a reason because you can see this better. See this white piece. Bring back, hold on. Now I'm going to lose everything. Okay, there you go. Now you can see what I'm doing better. We're going to take this white piece and you're going to put the square right in the corner, and it needs to be lined up perfectly. This edge, this edge, this edge. If it is even a little bit tilted like that, it's going to mess up your block. So you need that to be lined up really nicely. And then I'm going to use pins for this, and I'm going to pin about an inch from that line because we're going to sew on the line. And if you put your pin farther away, you can leave the pins in while you sew. All right, so this is what we're going to sew now. We're going to sew this, and we're going to sew this, and then we're going to pop back over here. So we're going to go to the sewing machine now. I'm going to wake that puppy back up. All right, no more comments yet. Now I am using a 1/4 inch foot, so I can just run the fabric right along the edge of this foot to know that I'm at a 1/4 inch seam. I'm also going to use a small stitch length. When you're putting pieces together, especially for quilting, you don't have to worry about knotting at the beginning and end as you're doing what's called piecing, because you're going to have things crisscrossing and you're using a pretty small stitch. So I do either hold this top bobbin. You can pull your bobbin thread up if you want to. I'm not going to this time, but I will on the next one to show you the difference. Never just press down, never start your pedal, like sewing, when your foot is up. You always want to put your foot down first to make sure it's in the right place. Because if I were to just start sewing, it might end up like that. And you can see there's a little bit of fabric. We don't want to see any fabric past that 1/4 inch. If you're new, you can also use guides. So you can get, find this. You can get like a magnetic seam guide. It's hiding. This is one that I got from Madame Sew. And the way it works, we might be here all day. I have so many things I want to tell you. The way it works is it has little holes for different distances. And so what you do is you put this under your sewing machine, and we want a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to slowly lower the needle and make sure it goes inside that hole. You can put the foot down if you want to. You want to make sure it's straight. So just make sure it is lined up straight with the guidelines on your sewing machine. And then this has a magnet. So you can see how that really sticks. You're just going to put that right up against that. Then we're going to take the needle out, move this. We're done with this, and now we have a guide. So as I sew, I can be looking at the foot as well as making sure the fabric is going along this guide. You can also use a tape guide. You can use the same kind of tape as I just used on the ruler to do the fussy cutting. Totally up to you. There's lots of ways and lots of tools that you can use. So I'm just going to sew this 1/4 inch. Now, one problem with using this for quilt piecing is I want to what we call daisy chain this. So instead of taking this off and having another long piece of thread to start again, I just want to put this in here and go, but you'll notice it is going over top of that. So this works well if you're just doing a bunch of straight pieces, but not if you're mixing and matching. So now I'm putting this corner with the line right under that foot to make sure that the needle is going to go onto that line, and I'm going to hold it on both sides because sometimes this will shift when you first start, which can cause problems. So I'm going to keep it as straight as possible. I'm just going to sew right down that line. Then you just, when you daisy chain, you can do tons of stuff at once, and then you just cut in between to cut those apart. All right, now we're going to go back so we can do some cutting and pressing. So I'm done with these pins. I can take these out. I'm dropping everything. Dropping, covering. All right, so now our goal, again, is to make this bow. And we have sewn one square. And what we're going to do to make the bow is we're going to cut a 1/4 inch from the seam where we stitched. You can see that right there on the outside of the square. Don't cut over here or you're going to be starting over again, which happens to the best of us, but we want to try not to do that. So this is why I love these rulers, because it is so quick and easy to just line up this bright blue with the edge of that stitch line, take my rotary cutter, cut that off. You can either save or ditch these. There's lots of things you can do with triangles, so I just always save them for a future project. Next, I'm going to set the seam. So setting the seam means you're going to press it before you ever flip or move or open the seam. And what that does is it takes out any air space that was created when you sewed, and make sure that that fabric gets nice and flat. Now, I'm going to admit, the first time I heard about this, I rolled my eyes a little bit. I was like, what? Seriously? Can it make that much of a difference? And now I'm going to be using steam now that we're done starching. And it really does make a difference. So I would definitely get in the habit of doing it. I grew up learning to sew in an analog world where I was taught by people, right? Like my best friend's mom liked to sew, and she taught us how to make wraparound skirts, and we learned how to make an apron in home ec. But there wasn't the internet and YouTube and all these other things. So you either bought a book or somebody taught you, and nobody ever taught me about that setting the seam thing. So that's why I was a little suspect. So now that we have set that seam, I'm just going to push this forward. And I like to what we call finger press it before I press it with steam. And then again, I'm going to use the quilter's clapper just to make sure that's as flat as, as flat, oh, I found my pencil. There it is. As flat as it can be. Different quilters have different ideas about pressing seams to one side versus pressing open. I usually press to the darker side of something unless there's a specific block where I want to nest the seams, which means I want to have some seams going this way and some this way to reduce thickness. But for this project, I always press towards the ribbon. So now we're just going to take this other piece and we're going to clip that on, making sure that you're paying attention. Oh, it's right side up for me, upside down for you. So when you're using directional fabric and you're doing quilting, always show everything face up before you flip and pin it to make sure you don't do that, because you don't want to present with half the animals upside down. Would not be nearly as cool. So I'm just going to clip that just like we did the last one. And I'm going to pause because I think there's a question. I'm using, so the question is, am I using a regular 1/4 inch foot? I can only see, like, I'm going to go to YouTube and look at the chat. I can see. Okay. I do use a walking foot. I pretty much use a walking foot all the time, unless I'm doing something that I can't use a walking foot, because a walking foot has feet that move the top fabric, and then the feed dogs move the bottom fabric. So it helps everything move more consistently. Not as important when you're just doing 2 pieces of fabric, but it gets more important as you're putting more layers together and need to be more precise. So if you have a walking foot, I would recommend using it for sure. Okay, so we set the seam, and now this is what is called a stitch and flip in quilting, where you stitch, you cut off part of the fabric, and then you flip it, and you're creating a piece that is the same size that you began with. So you remember our H piece, this white, was a big rectangle. Well, now it is a rectangle with a green piece, and now we're going to add the other green piece. You can't do these at the same time because you'll notice they overlap. And they should overlap exactly 1/4 inch so that when we sew the block together, you get a nice point there. And then there will be 1/4 inch on top as well. Sometimes it doesn't work out perfectly, but we do our best, and then we try and let go of our perfectionist tendencies. If you have them, I definitely do. And say, you know what? It's great. It's perfect just the way it is. Okay, so we're going to pin this. So basically I'm doing the same exact thing that we just did. So I'm going to go back to the sewing machine. And whenever I move things, especially if I use clips, they might shift a little bit, so I always double check to make sure everything is lined up really nicely before I put my needle down and start sewing. Oh yeah, I told you I was going to show you the difference between pulling up the bobbin when you first start daisy chaining versus not. So pulling up the bobbin, basically bobbin thread, basically is where you hold the top thread, you put your needle down, pull it back up while holding this, and then your bobbin thread pops up. That's why I also keep tweezers here so that I can grab that bobbin thread easily. Put them both in one hand. I use the tweezers to help get it under the foot, and then I pull back and then I start, because then your bobbin thread isn't going to create this little knot or bird's nest, as many of us call it, underneath your fabric. And I'm going to show you the difference after I do sew both of these pieces. Oh, that's not quite lined up. Okay. Now I'm just going to do the same exact thing we did last time. I'm lining up that corner and I'm stitching right on the line that I drew. Oh, of course, I want to show you about bird's nest, and of course it didn't make one. So normally it would make a bit of a mess here. This was the one we sewed first. You can see, well, it's hard because it's white. You can kind of see how that bobbin thread got tangled up in some of these first few stitches. Sometimes it's a lot worse than that. But on this one that we just did, it's perfect. There's no bobbin thread in any of those stitches. So you can kind of see the difference, hopefully. Let me see if I can, oh, that light's bad. Okay, hopefully you can see the difference there. All right, back over here to set our seams and to press. And one thing I like to do, because I'm constantly moving back and forth, I have my sewing machine on a table right next to this table. And I like to have a little bowl of pins, or bowl of clips, and a really strong magnet with pins in both locations, because then I'm pinning over on my workspace, and I often take the pins out at my sewing machine, and so then I don't have things randomly rolling around. So I'm going to cut off this 1/4 inch at the 1/4 inch from the seam. We're going to set these seams. We're really close to having a present. So when you break this down and you just look at the pieces of a quilt block, like, oh, that's one flying goose or one flying geese piece and 3 pieces of fabric sewn together and then a white on top, it's much easier than looking and saying, I have no idea how to make that bow and how to make that gift. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, one thing I want to show you. When I'm doing something that's straighter and I want the seams to go to one side, I put whichever side I want them to go to on top. So if I were to press like this, the seam would be going towards the gift. But I want the seam to be going towards the bow or the ribbon like I did here. So I'm going to put the ribbon on top and then I'm going to push that forward. And as you finger press that, you want to just feel with your fingers and make sure you can feel that that seam is going and kind of push it forward. And then take your iron and press that. So now we have the seams going towards the gift on both of those. Now, the next step is not to put the bow on top because they're not the same length. When you're quilting, everything always needs to be the same length when you're putting them together. And we have 2 little pieces, which are the J pieces. So we'll take our little J clip. I also found this cute little jar where I keep these letter clips so that they don't get mixed in with all of my other clips. So if you decide to do something where you're marking your clips, find a bag, make a bag, find a cute little jar, whatever you want, and I would recommend keeping them separate. So now what we need to do is we just need to sew these 2 pieces on the side, just like we did. Just like we did those. I want to just get this together really quick so I can show you adding this piece and this piece together, and then we're going to move on to the tree because I know this is, like I said, this is my first live. I wasn't sure how long this was going to take. It's going to take a little bit more than an hour if we do some of the things I want to show you for the tree as well. Oh, I forgot to bring you to my sewing machine with me. Because I'm sewing just this thing, I have to stop and start again. And then I always cut off the beginner threads. Okay, back here. Set the seams. We're going nice and fast now. Okay, now for something like this, you can either push your seams this way, or if I put this on top, it would be going this way towards the bow, which you might think is a better idea because then you wouldn't be seeing the white, right? Like when I did it this way, you can kind of see that white through there. However, you definitely want to do it this way because if you go like this, you're bending this part. You're bending this part right here forward, and that gets really thick. See how thick that is if we fold it that way? But if we fold it that way, it goes much more smoothly and it's not as thick. So these are the kinds of things you need to think about when you're pressing. And sometimes patterns will say which way to press, and sometimes it'll say whatever you prefer, because some people might press that seam open. Okay. Now, you'll notice this isn't perfectly straight. This is where I have to let go of my perfectionism, right? So we can trim this to make it perfect, or we can wing it. Now, if you're trimming to make it perfect, you don't want to trim much off because it can mess up your dimensions. But since it's only this little fold that's over the end, and that would add more bulk if I don't trim it off, I'm going to just slice that right off. Teeny, teeny bit, but it will make a difference. Okay, now we're going to do this. We're going to put our bow on top of our present, and then we're going to move on to our tree. So this point should be in the middle, and these should be about the same, not about, they should be exactly the same width. They're not quite. This is a teeny bit bigger, but it's not so much bigger that it's going to be a problem. So I'm going to fold this down, matching this edge, and then also making sure these sides are parallel. So like this one is going the same as this one. And then I'm going to put some pins. I usually pin near connections. And then this is a fun pin I wanted to show you. It's called a magic pin, and it's great for putting points together, or if you're connecting seams, because you'll have basically two pins at the same time going on either side of that stitch line. So I'm just going to put that there where it's kind of going on either side of that stitch line. And they're also angled up a little bit, so they're easy to pull out. You never want to sew over a pin. Like, no, just don't do it. That is how you will break needles and be very sad. So we're going to go sew this together real quick. Okay, I was like, oh, I forgot to bring you. I did bring you to my sewing machine. I'm just going to quickly pull that bobbin thread up, keep this all nice and neat. Now my foot is about to get to fabric that is kind of sticking up. So what I do, I'm going to take the pin out first so I don't go over that, is I take the tip of my scissors and I push that down, because you don't want it, the foot to push it and have it fold like that and have like weird folds in your seams. You want those seams to stay in the same direction that you pressed them. So I'll do the same thing there. Now the angels are singing because I saw my needle go exactly at the point where the the bow came together. So I know that that's going to work really well. Cut off these longer pieces. Okay, we're going to press or set that seam. And then this is the same thing as deciding which way to press the seams on the bow. I'm going to look at each way. So if I were to press it up this way, I'm folding this big section here. But if I were to press it this way, just these three pieces are going to fold. And so that is going to give me less bulk. So that is the way I'm going to do it. Look at that. Beautiful. See how perfect that point is to there? Oh my gosh, so good. And then there should be a 1/4 inch above each of these points. Yes. So that when you sew the top piece on here, hold on. So we're making this big gift, right? So when you sew this piece on, these points will be good. So this is going to basically replace that. So then the next thing you would do is you would just sew the straight thing on, and you would sew these things. Now, one thing I want to tell you, if you are new to quilting, I highly recommend you do projects like this. Table runners are one of my favorite things because if everything isn't absolutely perfect, you can fix it because you only have, let me show you again. Let's look at this one. So you only have one row of blocks in a table runner, right? Now, if you could use these blocks and you could make a beautiful quilt, but it would mean like you'd have, I don't know, maybe a band and then a gift and another tree and whatever. So everything has to line up across and up and down. So if things are off, you're going to notice. The bigger the quilt, the more you're going to notice your issues. But if you're doing a table runner, who's going to measure it? I'm not going to measure it. I'm going to confess that I cut this the wrong height. It's supposed to be 12.5 inches high, and somehow I cut it 12 inches high. So poof, I'm cutting every one of them 12 inches high. This table runner is going to be a ½ inch shorter than this one, but nobody's going to put them next to each other, and no one will ever know. All right. Oh, hi, Mary. Oh, Mary has been with us. I'm glad you've been with us. I was wondering where you were. I'm getting lint all over myself. But I'm glad you're able to chat now. Where are you from again, Mary? East Coast somewhere, I think. So we're done with this mostly. We just needs the top piece and added. And now I want to move on to our tree. So if you look at this tree, and it's the one that's in the photo on your printout, it is one piece of fabric for the green part. So now I'm going to show you how to get fancier. So I've already sewn the trunk together. It goes together exactly like the gift, but instead of having animals and this, it's white and the trunk. So that's already done. And now we need to make the tree. So I printed out the template. I made sure it was the exact right size, and I could have just put it on a piece of fabric and cut that triangle. Now also, my templates and most people's templates, if there's like a dashed line or a lighter line, that's just showing you where your seams are, right? So this is a 1/4 inch beyond that dash line all the way around. So that shows you kind of like, okay, you're going to cut this, but your tree's actually going to be that size. So for this, I decided I wanted a patchwork tree. So what I did was I took 3 of the fabrics and I cut a bunch of 2-inch squares. So they're about 1.5 inches square when they're sewn together. I just pieced them together randomly, set those seams, press those seams. On the rows, I pressed them to opposite sides, and then I did stagger them. But then because it felt pretty thick when I was putting the rows together, well, except for this one, I decided to press those seams open. Totally up to you. The goal is always to have things as less thick as possible so that they're easier to piece together and press. Oh, funny. Mary's got me all over the place. Okay. And I am 100%, you can wine time every time we go live. Like, let's have a party. Drink your coffee, drink your wine, whatever you want. Assuming you're home and not driving. Okay, so I made this patchwork, and I made sure it was at least as big as my template. So the bottom lines up, the top lines up, the sides line up. And now I want something I don't have here. Hold on one second. Okay. You guys hear my floor squeaking? I live in a 100-year-old house with original hardwood floors, so it gets a little squeaky sometimes. So this, move this down, is a rotating mat. It is absolutely not a beginner necessity, but it does make cutting easier for different things. I'm going to be using this a lot in my live on YouTube on Wednesday, but isn't that fun? So anyway, I'm going to put this on here because, as I mentioned before, the more you move your fabric and when you're cutting, the more likely you are to not be as accurate as you could be if you had a way to keep it still and move your mat. You could also move your big mat if you have room for that, but I definitely do not when trying to keep this on camera. So I'm just going to put 2 pins in the middle just to hold this in place. Actually, I'm going to put 3. Okay, and now we just need to, actually, you know what? Let me show you this. Let me show you something. Take the tape off of this. So if I pin that template and then I try and cut, see how that's rocking? Because these pin heads are big, they're balls, right? You can buy flat pin heads, like this little Riley Blake bird. Is flat. So then when I put that down, well, they're still rocking because of this one, but let's just take that one out and I'll show you how it works. Let me find another bird. I left them at my sewing machine. I love these birds, they're so cute. You can get all kinds of different ones. I found bats for Halloween. They were so much fun. You can find some that look like bows or buttons or hearts. All right, so we have flat pins. Then when we do that, it bounces a teeny bit, but not much at all. So you're going to be able to hold your hand flat and just press down. Now, hold your hand flat on your rotary or on your ruler. My friend warned me about this and I didn't listen. And my instinct was to do this, right? To have my hand up like this, kind of like a spider, and press down with my fingers. And she told me not to do it and I didn't listen. And I know some people do it all the time and don't have a problem. I ended up at the doctor's and in a brace for 6 months because I did it so hard and so long that I strained the tendon in my thumb. It was awful. So now I do what my friend told me to do from the beginning. I always press down with my hand flat. And then I'm just going to cut that off. And I'm going to lift this really carefully, making sure not to move anything. Then I'm going to spin, making sure not to move anything, and then I'm going to hit it with my finger. And then I'm going to cut this other side. Now, isn't that cute? So you can use the template to make a tree out of one piece of fabric that you like, or you can get crazy. You could do stripes, you could do 2 fabrics, you could do 3, whatever you want. But I kind of like this patchwork look. I think is going to give a real woodsy feel for this block. Now the next thing is, and I want to make sure you understood how I wrote this. So these pieces are what are going to go on the sides of the tree, right? To create this section and this section. Now, if you're using a solid, you can use the same, you can just cut 2 of this B. But if you're using like a low volume print where maybe it has a little bit of a design on it that's really soft, or you're using stripes or something like that, then you would need to cut 1 of each. So that's what is to know about that. But I'm going to be using white. So I have 2 pieces layered. I'm going to put that down. And since I cut the square or the rectangle, the size that I needed, I'm only going to have 1 cut, so I don't really need the rotary mat. I can just place this down and trim that. Now another thing, if this looks like, oh boy, I'm really new to quilting and I do not want to make that tree, you don't have to make the tree. You can just pop in another gift, or you can make a shorter table runner. It's totally up to you. I need a drink. Hold on 1 second. It's totally up to you. That's the beauty of sewing. You get to make the rules. Oh yes, Mary, I usually do that too. Okay, so the other thing that Mary pointed out is put your pinky on the outside. It helps it not push this way. Your pinky will kind of stop it from twisting as you're going. And another tip, I don't know if you've tried this before. Oh no, hold on. Okay. Phew, I didn't have a camera disaster. Is one of my friends uses an 8 or 10 pound weight and puts it on there whenever she sews, and then she can just hold that, and that thing's not moving unless she moves like that. This is especially helpful if you're cutting really long things. So if you're doing a bigger quilt and you're squaring it up after you've done all the quilting, I highly recommend getting that dumbbell you thought you were going to use for weightlifting and exercise, and sewing and exercising at the same time. Okay, back to our tree. So since we're using white, there's no real right side or wrong side to it. So you're going to place it down the way it goes. I keep moving off screen. And then you're just going to flip and pin that. And we're going to sew with a 1/4 inch. Then we're going to press, press, and then do this one. So let's just whip that up real quick. Actually, I think I'll use clips, be faster. I will also admit that sometimes when I'm doing smaller things, this I would always clip. But if I'm doing smaller pieces where I'm just putting them edge to edge, I might not. I might just look at it and guide it correctly. All right, back to our sewing machine. Another reason I like to pull up the bobbin thread is you can kind of pull it to help your machine get started. If you're, if it's the beginning of stitching and you don't have any fabric behind it. All right, I'm a little nervous about this. Let's see what happens here, ladies. Oh, do not feel silly about asking questions. That's the whole point of this. That's the whole point of this membership and the whole point of doing live stuff, so that you can ask questions as I'm doing it and as they're coming up. So the question is, the tree and star patterns are cut from other fabric, not the fabric pieces we originally cut. Hold on, let me look at that. I think I just want to make sure I wrote it the way I thought I wrote it. Okay, so we have A, B, and C on our chart. And B and C are background fabric, right, which I'm doing white. And so I did tell you to cut the rectangles. And then you're going to take the templates and cut those shapes from those original rectangles. And it will show you that here as well. G, did I tell you? Yeah, G, I did say to do yellow 3x3. What I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to do brown. So you can change up your colors and do whatever you want. So I'm going to make a brown star to go on top of this tree. Did I set this seam? I can't remember. We'll do it again. And so for these, you want to push the background out. Okay, yeah, exactly what I thought happened. Too short here, too long here. Whoops. You need to center this, so there should have been like a 1/4 inch, or anyway, I messed it up. Seam ripper to the rescue. I love this one. It fits right on your finger. And it has like a little divot for your thumb. Because this is too far off to really fix. It's because we have to do a 1/4 inch seam down here. Here, I'll show you with the ruler. So if I just let it go, right? Sometimes I do. But if I did, and I did a 1/4 inch, trying to figure out where you can see this the best. And I did a 1/4 inch from the where that white was, there wouldn't be enough of the green getting caught and your block might pull apart. So when you mess up like this, let's pretend I did it on purpose just to show you this. You do need to pull it out and realign it. Whoops. It was supposed to stay on my finger and then I dropped it. So the way you use this is you pull a few stitches out and then you hold it like this and you kind of do it like a zipper, but go pretty slowly, because if you get too fast, you might poke that through one of your fabrics. But you just keep moving like that. And if it gets too hard, just give it a little tug like I just did. I have like 4 kinds of seam rippers. And my theory is you don't sew enough if you're not using your seam ripper. What? Oh no, I'm so sorry. All that time and you weren't even seeing how I messed up or how to use my seam ripper. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so what happened was I sewed this because I just lined it up and I didn't pay as close attention to where I lined it up. And then when it flipped, darn it. Okay, I'm going to try and recreate the crime scene here. When it flipped, okay, do it this way. The white was too far down here and not up matching here. So I had to take my seam ripper and undo it, and I apologize. And when you use your seam ripper, then you just want to try and get as much of the thread out before you use the piece again. And I usually just pick it with my fingers. You can use a lint brush too, like a lint roller. All right, so let's try this again. So this goes like this. This goes like this. If we do it like that, let me make sure this is going to work. I made this before and it worked. So why is it giving me grief? Oh, that's on totally backwards, first off, because it needs to go like that. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so when we're lining this up, this needs to be a 1/4 inch below the tree. So if I put my ruler here, I'm going to confirm this before I sew it again. We get that point right at the edge of that blue. And then there should be a 1/4 inch above it up here. Okay, check, check. Now let's pin it and make sure that's going to work. Okay. Oh, Mary, you're seam ripping a lot? Okay, that didn't work at all. I did it backwards. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, I'm going to add this to the PDF directions too, so it's more precise. So we want to see a 1/4 inch here at the bottom, I think. I'm going to try and speak with authority. Okay, we want to see a 1/4 inch diamond there. and then up there. But let's check it again. But just make me feel better, you guys, and tell me that this is going to make you feel like you have permission to not do everything right the first time, right? Because some people complain about videos like they always do it perfect and they never make mistakes. And that's totally not true. They just edit out the mistakes, FYI. Oh, criminy. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? You know what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to redo this template so that this white piece doesn't make everyone crazy like it is making me crazy. I'm going to make it so that it's a little bit too long and then on both ends, and then you're going to trim it to size. That's what I'm going to do. So I will send you an email when that is updated. Ah, there we go. That's going to work. Okay, now I'm going to show you my sewing machine for real and for a reason. All right, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Correct camera's on now. Set that seam. Moment of truth. Yay, it worked. Okay, awesome. Okay, can I do it again? That's the question. All right, so always put your pieces right side up to make sure you have them the correct way, because remember I almost pinned that together like that, which would have been more seam ripping, picking. So we want okay, let's see if this works. I think I might have to edit this replay. So see how this piece has that little 1/4 inch cut off? That 1/4 inch needs to be right up at the top of that tree, and that is how that's going to line up properly. Okay, I don't have to redo that template. I just have to redo how I say to do it. Thank you, Mary. You made me feel really good about that. We'll just pretend I did it on purpose so I could show you how to fix it. All right, while I sew this together, let's talk about December live. So December's busy, right? We have holidays, and I am also going to India for a week in December. My son just got married in September, to a girl who was born in India, raised outside of Boston, but most of her extended family is still in India. So I'm going to India, which will take 32 hours to get there. December 9th, and I think I get back on the 17th. I'm going to go to a Hindu wedding, wear a sari. It's going to be so pretty. I'll share pictures when I get back. So I got that going, and then we also have holidays. And it's crazy, this year Hanukkah and Christmas align. It does not happen often. My husband is Jewish, so we celebrate both. And the first night of Hanukkah is Christmas night. So I kind of find that nice, because then it's a few less. We all going to get together in December. Any thoughts? Do we want to try and squeeze it in? I'm doing a live on regular YouTube, so that's not perfect, but I'm going to be able to work with that. We're just going to straighten that. I'm doing a YouTube live at 9/noon Eastern on the 7th, just for general YouTube. We could do something later. Like we could do something an hour, hour and a half, maybe an hour and a half later, so we have time to recover. Let me know what you think about that. And it'll be something a little simpler, so it won't take us as much time. Okay, so what I'm going to do to fix how that isn't perfectly straight is I'm going to use my ruler with this beautiful blue 1/4 inch. It's hard for you to see. And I'm lining it up so that the tip of the tree is right at that 1/4 inch and that the sides are parallel to these lines. And I'm just going to trim that a little bit. We're calling that good. Okay, so now we have our tree. And then we just sew this on top, this on top, and that on bottom to finish. That can just be a regular tree, but because I want it to be a Christmas tree, I will then cut out a star, which I should have pre-cut, but I didn't. But I'm not going to do it now because you can understand how to cut a star. But I'll show you this. So the star will be brown. That's the basic look of how that's going to look. So I think that's going to be really cute. And I will finish this. So I'm only going to keep you a few more minutes because I know this has been a little long. Or I don't know. Has this been too long for you? You tell me. I'm like making assumptions for you. Okay, so once you get your topper done, or your blocks done. So this will be another block. And here's our gifts. So we have these long strips that get sewn in between each. So the tree will go here. And yes, that tree's too long because I cut these the wrong size, as I already fessed up about. And you're going to have the center. And I'm going to show, we'll look at our example. Gosh, that light is so harsh. So blocks, little strips in between each one. So they're not square blocks, but I think they go together better on this table runner when there's just a little bit of space in between each one. Then the next thing you would do is you would piece these border strips. You can either use a really long piece of fabric. If you have it, that's going to be the easiest. Or you can put 2 pieces together for that. So what I like to do is I like to put the top and the bottom, and then I make this as one piece, the square, this piece, and this piece. And I make 2 of those, and then I put them on the ends. Then you're going to quilt it. And I'm going through all these. Okay, I'm told I'm looking at comments. Okay, whatever's easiest for me. I'm thinking we might do the 7th, so it's before I get major jet lag, instead of trying to mush in between me not knowing which end is up, because it's a 13.5-hour time difference for me in India, and right before the holidays. So I will come up with a plan. If you guys have an idea of what you would like to do, I don't know, maybe we do a gift bag with box bottoms, something holiday-ish. Let me know some ideas and I will figure out what we will do. Okay, so then you're going to have that whole top done, and then it's time to quilt it. I usually do quilting by machine. So I would layer like the backing fabric, you would put that right side down on your table, and then your quilt or your batting. You always want your backing and your batting to be about 2 inches larger on all sides than the pretty part, than the top that you spent all the time making. Then you put the top down, pin it all together. I'll do videos to show you what I mean. Pin it all together, and then you can quilt it. So what I did with this one, hold on, I'm going to take it down so you can see closer. Good thing I'm tall. Okay. So that's my secret. This is like kitchen things from 2 kitchen things from IKEA that you can hang like plastic, look like a teacher. You can hang like plastic containers on, but I just use the hooks to put a tension rod so I can hang my quilts. All right, I'm going to switch. So when I quilted this, I just quilted like a 1/4 inch from the edge of everything on the gifts. And then on the tree, I got fancy and I did a little free motion quilting and kind of made a garland stitch look to quilt that tree. The star you're just going to applique on. You can either use a spray adhesive, or I used Wonder Under, yeah, like a fusible web. I'll do a video about that too. That'll be in the membership eventually, not all this week. And then I just did cute little, cute little snowflakes that I just randomly tacked around, because I just didn't want to put a bunch of lines above the gifts, but you want to make sure you're connecting everything together. So I did little snowflakes. And then these are fine. I didn't need to do anything there. I did little X's in the corner, but then some of it got covered by the binding. And for this one, I did binding where I sewed the binding on the back and then I flipped it to the front so that the stitching would be perfect all the way around. You can do it either way. So the binding is either a little thicker on the front or on the back. Traditionally, and traditionalists would never do this. My friend would be appalled. She would always have the thinner binding on the front, and then she would hand stitch this on the back so that it wouldn't show. I do not have time for that, and she has also had carpal tunnel surgery on both of her thumbs because she insists on doing that for all of her quilts, and I have no interest in that. So you do you, machine or by hand. So let's look at how this is going to look. So this super traditional colors, red and green. This one is going to be the woodsy option. I lost the tree. It's completely gone somewhere. Where's the tree? Oh, there it is. Okay. Little tree. It's going to have that. So that's an area that's going to give a really, really different look. And this is something that I like totally love, is talking about color and how mixing and matching and choosing colors of fabric give you a totally different look. So there's going to be, I have one lesson in the color confidence section in the membership now. There's going to be more. That's something else we can talk about. If color is something that stresses you out, we can talk about color next time. We can do another project. You guys tell me because you showed up. Okay, let's see. Okay, Mary does not want to applique, so she's thinking outside the box, and she's going to find a button. Totally works. That is the beauty of sewing. If you don't want to do something, you don't have to. Just like you could skip the tree and just have all gifts. So anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm so excited about this program. Just I'm building what I wish I had had when I was starting to sew. The technique library just has super quick techniques. I don't know if you've jumped in there yet. Like if you forget how to pull up the bobbin thread, you do not have to wade through this hour-and-a-half replay video. You can go into the technique library, and it's like a 2-minute video, shows you exactly how to pull up the bobbin thread, and then you can be on your way. So I'm trying to do lots of little techniques like that, projects by theme, all different levels, some for fabric scraps, super easy, some quilts. Anyway, I'm excited. I'm excited for you to be here. If you love this, share it with your friends. The more the merrier. I know, Mary, it's crazy, right? Well, it's also, I don't even know if I can, let me see. Hold on. I'm going to grab my camera that was on my sewing machine, and I want to show you guys like what I'm working with here. And I'm not complaining because I know that I'm really, really spoiled with how much space I do have. But man, when you start putting all these cameras and lights and stuff in and trying to reach everything, okay. Hold on, I need to change the lighting. Okay, well, this is only going to go so far because I have it plugged in instead of a battery because you don't want, oh, here we go. That's better. All right, so here's one end of the room. It's this long, skinny room with an angled ceiling. And so I'm basically like tripping over everything. I've got this switchboard here. I used to just paint. Now I paint sew, and I'm like high tech here. And then that light. that camera, camera 1, light 2, and then that way. So anyway, it's a little crazy. To be able to get all the angles and show you, I have to be like super organized, and then I lose stuff because I only have so much space. So, oh yes, Mary, I told you I was gonna tell you that. Thank you for reminding me. So Mary had asked how we could take these blocks and turn them into placemats, like to use them for other things. So I did get that out. Hold on, I need water. I have like no spit left. Cotton mouth going. Okay. So here are 2 placemats. All this out of the way. Go away. I need you to see the placemats. Okay. So it's the same design. This is from a placemat series that I did for Riley Blake a few years ago. This one is bound. It's like just quilted with squiggles and regular seam binding. Somebody did this for me. So they did the back to front binding. And then this one is even easier. There's no binding. I just sewed it right side out. Like I put the fabrics right side together, added batting, sewed all the way around, left an opening, turned it right side out, pressed it, sewed around the edges, and then did the quilting at the end. So both of those totally legal. So, and these are about 11 by 18. You could do 12 by 18, but you could just take any of these blocks and you could like put it in the center, and then you could put fabric on either side. Like, you know, like you could do just a solid, you could do little stripes. If you preferred, you could put the block to the side, and you could put a bigger piece of fabric over here. You could do stripes. You could do this patchwork. I don't have much patchwork left. You get the idea, right? So you could do all kinds of things. You could also make your placemat a little bit wider and just have 2 presents. Make this shorter. Because placemats, there's not, like, they can be whatever size you want. They can be whatever shape you want. My sister's a huge fan of circles. You could do 2 blocks, and then you could put maybe a 1.5 inch band around, just like we did for the table runner, and call it a placemat. Let's see if I can find the tree again. I did. I found it. Use the tree. Could put 2 trees. You could do a tree and a present. So lots of ways. You can't see it again? Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm getting tired. Okay, sorry, Mary. Let's start that again. Oh my goodness. We definitely have to edit the replay. Okay, let's start again. Here's a placemat. This one was done the way I told you about, you know, you're going to layer the right side down, then the batting, then the topper. We call that like a quilting sandwich. And then it was just done with squiggles and then binding. Okay. Then this one is even easier because some people don't love binding and they don't want to bind everything. So this one, I put the front and the back right sides together, then the batting, sewed all the way around, left some space to turn it open, turned it right side out, pressed that, sewed around the edge to close the opening, and then I quilted on top. So these are about 11 by 18. That's the reason that these are that size is because we can fit 6 of them onto a fabric panel that is like a yard. But you can make any size you want. So here's all the great ideas you just heard about and didn't see. So you could put a present in the middle, and then you could just put a fabric on either side. Make it kind of like that. Obviously, it would be as big as you need it to be. You could put a present or a tree or anything on one side, And then you could put a piece of fabric, maybe a print, or you could put those animals. I can't access, hold on. Yes, I can. I was like, I can't access a bigger piece of fabric, but I lied, I can. Okay, this will give you a better visual. So you could do this, where you're kind of repeating the fabric from the bow as this side, just make it like that, or you could have it on both sides. You could also do 2 blocks. So this would be a little bit of a bigger placemat than what we have here, because you would probably want to add a strip over here and then maybe some kind of a border, or your border could just be binding. Totally up to you. This tree could be really cute. Oh, this, you know what, this could be really cute. Do this, then put a strip, right, like a little band, and then you could repeat this patchwork over here. Anyway, you get the idea. So it kind of repeats the look and texture of that. Or you could put the tree in the center, put patchwork on either side, put a band and patchwork on either side. So many options. You just need to decide what size you want your placemat to be. And working off of these blocks, I would say your let's see, this one, well, if you had they're probably going to be at least 12 to 14 inches tall by 18 to 20. So maybe oversized Christmas. And yes, I agree with you, Mary. Binding looks cute, but sometimes you don't have the time or you don't have the mental energy to do it on smaller projects. All right, so next time I'm going to try and not forget to change the camera twice, but we had a lot of camera changes today, so I did pretty well. Maybe I'm going to give myself a B or a B+ on that. Did the placemat ideas that Mary had asked for. I'm glad you're not drinking wine since you're going to be out driving. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. I was a little worried at first that I was going to be talking to myself this entire time. So it's way more fun. It is a lot of fun when people show up, when they ask questions, interact, because like I showed you, I'm like standing here in my room by myself. So that's all I got for you today. I will finish up my new woodsy placemat, table runner, and I will add it to the membership so you can see kind of, okay, pick a different fabric, gives you a totally different look. So anyway, and I will keep you posted on what we're going to do a little bit later in the day on the 7th, because I leave on the 9th, so I don't want to do it on Sunday. That's got to be my day to relax, do my nails, and make sure I've packed everything 10 times. So have a great day. Thank you again for being here, and you can always reach me by email if you have comments, feedback, suggestions, like a technique you want me to work on next, because I kind of wing it with what I'm doing. But if you have something you definitely want to see, feel free to email me at hi@sewwithtarareed.com or suggestions@sewwithtarareed.com. And I love that fabric too. It's called the woodsy fabric. It's called Let's Get Lost in the Woods. So very fun. You can find that on my more about that on my regular website at tarareed.com. So have a great afternoon/evening and rest of your weekend. I'm going to sign off now.